Welcome to Make a Path Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today we're going to talk about Preacher, Season 1, Episode, I'm not sure. Episode 1 or 2, I don't know, because the pilot was considered Episode 0. I know I got a couple of people that commented telling me that in the last review. But when I bought it, when you go to buy it on Amazon, because I'm in the middle of this move, and everything's still going to be a clusterfuck for another week, and then everything's going to be fine after that. But I had to get it off Amazon, and then I got episode 2 off Amazon, and it's episode 1, episode 2, and I've seen a couple places online where it's episode 1, episode 2, and then for AMC, what was it, episode 0, and then episode 1 was episode 2. So I think this is episode 1, technically, the way they're doing it. Episode 0 was the pilot. There's 10 episodes this season, so I don't know if that's going to end on episode 9 or episode 10, and we're getting like a bonus. I don't know. I'm going to look into that. If you guys already know, do me a favor, drop that down in the comment box. But this episode basically picks up where we left off with a little bit of time skip, it feels like, because Cassidy and Jesse, the preacher, have built up a little bit of a connection, like an attachment, you know, a growing friendship, a growing bond. We do see Cassidy leave the preacher. It looked like he was going to bounce. He robbed him, essentially, after he passed out drunk. He robbed him and he was going to leave, and it looks like he turned around and was like, okay, you know what? He's going to go back for whatever reason. I'm sure we'll dig into that more in the coming episodes. But this episode, not only did it pick up where it left off with that spirit being entering all the different preachers, exploding them, and then finally resting in Jesse, not exploding him, and giving him this power where when he commands it in a special way, not all the time with what he says, but in a special way, when he commands it, the Word of God, I see a few people calling it. Again, I have not read the comics, and I will read the comic. I got a million messages. Read the graphic novel. I'm going to pick that up after season 1. I want to do these reviews from the perspective of somebody who is watching the show without reading the comic, and then after the season, I'm going to go get book 1 and book 2, depending how far. I'm going to gauge it. I don't know if I want to read all the graphic novels and then continue with the series or whatnot, but after I finish the season, I'm going to go back, read the graphic novels, and then make a review of the complete season from a different perspective after reading the graphic novels. So, okay, so Jesse has this, the preacher, Jesse, has this Word of God, so to speak. So whenever he commands it, whoever he commands it to does that thing. We've seen him do it in this episode where the guy who, I was kind of hoping Jesse would kill him. He's a bus driver from the looks of it, and he's a pedophile, okay? And he's got the feelings for some girl on his bus, and Jesse's like, you need to forget about her, and then he commands it, and then the guy's like, I have no idea what just happened. So when he does do that, it does work officially. So then he goes to the girl, and this is what I think, or I will argue that this is a good cliffhanger. Now, there's cliffhangers don't necessarily mean that's always going to be a good thing. I know cliffhangers are all over in TV, and then ongoing movie series, you always get cliffhangers. It's definitely a tool that Hollywood utilizes constantly, you know, especially in TV. And this, I would argue, is a really good cliffhanger. He leans forward to the girl who's in a coma. It looks like she had some sort of accident. I might have missed how she got that accident. Exactly, maybe it was a car accident or something. I might have missed that part, or maybe they didn't discuss it, but she's got a dented skull, and he tells her to open her eyes. He wants to test this out because he did it with the scumbag, and it worked, the scumbag bus driver, and it worked. So he tests it out with the girl, and then they end it off with that cliffhanger. We don't know if it works or not. We don't know if she opened her eyes or not. So it was like the point of view of the girl on up. And he tells her to open her eyes. Now, I argue that is a good cliffhanger. I like what they did there. So this episode seemed to focus more on, not in the very beginning, but throughout, it seemed to focus on this Word of God aspect. Now, I think character-wise, they focused heavily on the preacher, they focused heavily on Tulip, and then Cassidy. Now, they're focusing on this trio, and I think Cassidy has to steal the show, especially in this episode. I mean, I wrote down a few lines specifically because I knew I would be talking about Cassidy because, again, he stole the show in this episode, and I think, I can't compare him to the character in the comic, but for the casting on this role already on the show, I love it. I love the actor. I think he's doing a great job. and I love the lines where he says, I'm running dangerously low on drugs, or funds for drugs, something like that. And then he says, God's plan for me is to tell you that God's plan for you is boring, or some shit like that. And then when the preacher's like, well, what's your story? And he goes, and he tells him the truth. He's like, well, I'm a vampire. I'm like 120 years old, da-da-da-da. And the preacher starts laughing because he thinks it's like a bullshit response, or at least that's how it felt. The chemistry there between the preacher and Cassidy, it feels authentic. Like, that's an organic... The way they film it, even though with the time skip, it felt organic, even with the time skip, because that's kind of like a cheat. We didn't see them develop some sort of friendship, and I'm only assuming there's some sort of time skip because it feels that way. You know what I mean? Last episode, the preacher passed out. He wakes up. This guy who helped him momentarily at the bar, where he had a quick conversation with him, was fixing the AC and doing some things around. So we didn't see around the church. We didn't see it forming, but we got a hint of it here. So maybe the time skip's only a few days. It doesn't have to be anything major. But I love the chemistry between those characters, and especially Tulip again. My crush is still going strong after 2 episodes. I like the mystery there behind those characters, and I like the mystery behind the two... The more silent type. They said they're from the government, those 2 characters. Now, it was odd because they got chopped up, which I love the gore in this shit. The gore and the sound effects, I watched it with headphones on, and it was just disgusting, just, every single time. Just nastiness, Even when it was simple, like the guy breaking his nose, it was just squish, squish, squish. And I love how they do that and they basically push the boundaries here with the violence, I feel, and I think that's good overall with not just AMC and what's on AMC, because again, I want, The Walking Dead also on AMC. I want that to push the boundary too, and I also Better Call Saul, if it needs to, push the boundary. And this is not just beneficial with AMC, but other stations as well. Because if we can get rid of these ridiculous rules on TV, like you can only have 4 shits a season or something. I heard that recently, and that's a real rule. I seen in an interview with Robert Kirkman, they talked about how they only get like 4 or 5 shits or something like that per season, or maybe it was every few episodes. And I think shit like that is utterly ridiculous. It hurts my brain knowing there's people this stupid out there that make these rules. That is an intelligence problem, because if you say shit once or if you say shit 5 times, it's not going to affect anyone any different. They might get sick of hearing it. You get people who don't like curses. Me personally, I don't believe curses are real. I think it's moronic. You can have a mother changing her daughter or son as a baby, and you could be like, oh, you made a poopy, a stinky, you could say turd. But once you start saying crap, that's more like for teenagers, and then shit, now all of a sudden, shit hits the fan. I think that's probably one of the dumbest things we can do as human beings, is to censor certain words when other words mean the same fucking thing, And that's why I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, I think censorship on TV is stupid. If you don't want your kids watching, be a parent, put them to bed. Let us enjoy our gore, violence, profanity, you name it. I don't care. Put it on TV. You don't like it, don't change that channel. And this is coming from a father where, my daughter watches TV. I make sure what she watches is appropriate. And that's the end of it. It's that simple. I'm sure I'll run into problems in the future, but I'm not going to ramble on. When that time comes, I will handle those problems, and I'm not going to go bitching to the world to micromanage what I do or how I raise my child, Put violence, curse words, all that, put it on TV for us to watch if we like it and enjoy it. After all, it is fake and we know it. It's not turning us all into psycho serial killers. Anyway, this was Preacher's 2nd episode. Technically, I think it's labeled as the 1st episode. Again, the pilot was 0. I loved it. I'm addicted to this show already. The 1st episode had me kind of on the fence where I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't quite sure if this is something that would sink its hooks in for an entire season, and I'm convinced now. Fully convinced. I loved it. Sorry again about the boring background. I will have this all set up. Maybe I'll hang up some pictures and posters or whatever. I got the office set up with a couch and then an actual office table, so that way we can do different filming areas, and then I'm staging another area area there. It's a work in progress. I'll have that remedied in a short while. So hang in there. And again, huge thank you. I think we're coming up on 77,000 subscribers. I don't know. Listen, I got to go over to my Game of Thrones review. I'll see you guys later. Thoughts, opinions, theories, suggestions, you name it, put those down in the comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn. Subscribe now.